You are listening to Small Business Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives small business owners the straight talk on productivity, time management, business systems, leading your teams, strategic decision-making, and mindset. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the productivity specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. Today is episode 374, Brand Strategy, the Unsung Hero of Success with Jacinta Gandy. If you're a small business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I'm looking forward to bringing this conversation all about branding your small business with our guest, Jacinta Gandy. Jacinta is an experienced branding and digital marketing expert with over 13 years of experience working with iconic brands like Disney and Nike. As the owner and founder of Social Circle, she has empowered over 150 entrepreneurs in the last 4.5 years, helping them achieve significant growth and success. Jacinta is passionate about providing real, honest support to small business owners, guiding them to build strong brand identities and effective marketing strategies. Before we dive in, I want to make sure that you have taken my next level business owner quiz. I invite you to hit pause and head on over to take the quiz right now. 3 short minutes at amberdelagarza.com/quiz. Take the quiz, find out what's most holding you back from taking your business to the next level, and then you will get a curated playlist of specific episodes that address those challenges. And inside those episodes, you will get real strategies and actionables that you can implement in your business right away. So head on over to amberdelagarza.com/quiz. And now, let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to the podcast, Jacinta. How are you today?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me today, Amber.
I am looking forward to our conversation because I think I'm going to be learning quite a bit from you. So we get to talk about a brand strategy. But before we get into brand strategy and what it is and what it isn't, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself that you did not share in your official bio and why I get to talk to you about brand strategy today?
Yeah, so I'll give you guys the very, very abridged short version, but I got started in this industry about 15 years ago at a digital marketing agency based in New York City. I hate to make myself sound painfully old, but it was around the time that like Facebook ads were like just coming out and everybody was super excited about them. And I really took the opportunity to dive in headfirst and to learn about Facebook ads. And then my career just kind of evolved from there. I spent almost 8 years on the marketing agency side, and then I transitioned to the marketing tech side, which was a lot of fun. And then right around 2020, when COVID decided to rear its ugly head, I was ready for the change, had always wanted to start my own business and help small business owners. So I took a leap of faith. I started Social Circle. And voila, I'll make it sound like it was easy, even though it was the hardest thing I ever did in my life, right? 5 years later, here we are.
Yeah, that was a big fast forward through the entrepreneurial journey. Okay, so but I actually have a question before we get into brand strategy. Do you have an opinion on where paid ads are going in general? Like, do you think that they are like no longer relevant? Are they on their way out? I'm just curious, and if I'm putting you on the spot, you can say no thank you to that question. But I'm just curious because you have pivoted your career and your business. So I'm guessing you saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think paid ads are going anywhere.
No,
I think that people have to get more creative, though, in how they market because customers are very, very sophisticated now, right? I mean, my mom, I won't tell everyone how old she is, but she knows what remarketing is, which is like insane, right? So like, I
Right.
think when you think about just how sophisticated consumers have come, the tactics that, a lot of, traditional marketing agencies have relied on for years, they just don't resonate anymore. And that's why you're seeing more and more of them go and work with influencers and go and hire normal people to talk about their products, right? So I
Yeah.
definitely don't think that paid ads are going anywhere. I still think that Meta and TikTok, not sure what their future is, but I still think in terms of like impressions and in terms of reach, it's still a really great value for people. I mean, in terms like business owners, I think the challenges, especially if you have a small business, is always like a lot of times you're bootstrapping. And so it's trying to figure out how to get funding to support paid advertising. But the metrics are unbelievable. I mean, if you wanted to, for example, like take out an ad in the New York Post, right? Like you're going to pay and then you're not really going to know if it performs or not, right? You're going to hope
right.
that, maybe you can put a coupon code in there, but there's just not that type of visibility there. And there's not the opportunity to really optimize that, to leverage, different learnings you get from different target markets and audiences. So the short answer, no, don't think they're going anywhere. But I do think that there used to be, back in the day, I mean, like paid ads, like you could print money off of them. Like it was just easy.
I
It was
heard that
so
rumor.
easy.
I heard everybody doing it. And I've got to tell you, I live in Vegas. And if I gambled, I should have stopped because I never figured out how to make it print me money.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that those days have shifted a bit.
Yeah.
Again, because not only are consumers more sophisticated, but we're all just like content exhausted, right? It's wild. It's like we're inundated with so much content now that like even if you get that viral moment, it's just not going to translate as much as it used to.
Right. It's like a flash in the pan.
It's a flash in the pan. So creative is really the name of the game. Consistency, everybody hates that C word, but it's really, really the name of the game. Like, and then just like, optimizing your learnings.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's talk about what you're here to talk about. Let's kick it off with brand strategy. So we had a little bit of pre-chat and I crossed my words and said, we're talking about personal branding. And you said, we're talking about brand strategy. Let's start off there. What is the difference? And how do you define brand strategy? And we'll dive in from there.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, personal branding, super important. I don't want to minimize that. But when we talk about personal branding, a lot of times what we're talking about, if I could just please use you as an example, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about Amber, right? So how do you show up? Like, what's your, how do you speak? What are your values? Like, it's way more about basically your image and how you're using that to basically signal to others like what you stand for, right? Or what you represent. So everyone should have a personal brand, whether or not you have a brand or you have a company or you have a business, right? It's like, how do you present yourself, right?
Yeah.
Are you casual? Are you chill? Like, do you walk around looking like Beth Dutton, right? Or are you more buttoned up, right? Like, it's like, what is your style? I think that's more where we get into the personal brand lane.
Yeah.
And when we talk about brand, your brand is technically a person, like it's a live thing. And so this is when we get into brand strategy. We start to define it and what all the elements of it really mean. And so when you have a brand strategy, now all of a sudden that can be used to inform your personal brand. So I'll give you a better example.
Yeah.
I have a client who is obsessed with pink. In fact, when we did her website, I said, do we have to use pink? Because it's like that, like bubble gum, like pink color, you know what I mean? And so I was like, is pink still a thing? And she's like, let me know right away. Like pink isn't going anywhere. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get really creative and make this sophisticated high-end pink brand. It's beautiful, by the way. But pink has always been her color, right?
Mhm.
And, she always gets her nails done pink. She has these pink glasses that she wears. So this is like part of her personal brand. It's not just about clothing. There's many other things that are inherent to her personal brand, right? Like
Yeah.
she's a very like no BS person. She cuts through the chase. Like, so there's a lot of things, but like her personal brand and her brand sort of cohesively go together.
Yeah. And I think that the view that I was approaching it as my own business, even though I coach many businesses where it's not a personal brand, the company has its own identity. And for me, it's such a blurred line, right? Because I am the service that's being sold. And so I feel that my company is an extension of me. And so what my brand is what the company brand is. But for many reasons, I can see why definitely understanding and separating. And what I heard you say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that once you have the company's identity, it can feed your personal brand. Is that what you said? Like influence it.
Exactly. And because I think a lot of us as small business owners, we are founder-led brands. So those worlds are going to merge very quickly, right? Because you're like,
Mhm.
this is what I'm about. This is what I care about. This is what
Yeah.
I like. So then what you produce ends up looking a lot like you. And that's great. So like to an extent, like that's really great because now all of a sudden you have a brand that symbolizes you and resonates really well with you. But when we go into the marketplace, if we're creating a brand for consumers, that might not be the case at all. The exercise can be completely different, right?
Yeah.
Like we could be saying, how do we create a brand that's going to resonate with a certain demographic? Or how do we create a brand that's going to stand out in a very crowded marketplace, right? So if we're talking about, say we're talking about a luxury hotel or something. There's thousands of luxury hotels, right? So what could we do to make our luxury hotel different? Maybe brands like the Ritz-Carlton or Waldorf Astoria are known for being stuffy. So maybe we're going to be different. We're going to be really edgy. We're going to be really playful, really fun, right? So those are
Yeah.
the types of ways and those are the types of things that you think about as you're creating the brand.
Okay. So before we dive into like how we create the brand and what are the aspects of the brand, I'm curious, like what is the ROI? So when you have small business owners, as we're speaking to, they have so many hats they wear, they have so many things on their to-do list.
Yep.
Why would this be prioritized? How does it impact the business?
Yeah. So the ROI on brand strategy is huge. And the reason why it's huge is because I always say it's like the thing that most people overlook. A lot of people, they still don't truly understand what brand strategy is, which is one of the reasons why we're having this conversation today. I think
Right.
typically business owners, back in the day, dating myself again, it was like when you were going to start a business, the first thing that you thought about was, let me create a business plan, right? And that's
Mhm.
kind of where you got started. I
Yeah.
don't think a lot of, business plans are very useful, but quite frankly, I talk to a lot of small business owners and business plan is not coming out of their mouths. Like that's not what they're thinking
No.
about, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've met a business owner that's like, not only did I create the business plan, but things are going just as planned. It worked out.
exactly. Right. So most people, when they want to launch a business, what that looks like is I'm going to start a page on Instagram. I'm going to start something on Etsy. I'm going to start something on Pinterest. Like that's usually where they start with that, like, let me create this handle. Now that's
Yeah.
great. You created a social media account. Does not necessarily mean you have a business, but that's a great first step, right? Let's get in the
Right.
marketplace. Let's see if this even works. Let's see if there's traction. So I'm not hating on that idea. But I think once they get there, they realize, oh crap. Well, if I'm going to post things, what am I going to post? What is it going to look like? What are the colors? Da, 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 da. And then they start to say, okay, I need a logo. And then they go usually to Fiverr or someplace online and they get a logo, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes time to get a logo, they think about it very visually because a logo is a visual element. So they're like, oh, well, I like the logo for this for Clinique. So let me get a logo that looks similar to that. You know what I mean? That's kind of how they think about it. And
Mhm.
then designers and people in the branding world are usually pretty good at saying, oh, okay, you like this aesthetic. So it sounds like you want something that's luxury, or you want something that's minimal, or that font you chose, it's giving me an edgy. So we're very good at like interpreting what people are saying through the visual elements. But basically, like, you missed a whole step, because how do you create a visual identity for something when you don't even know what the brand is?
Yeah.
What does it even stand for? Like,
guilty as charged, right? Like, I remember setting up my logo and I was like obsessed. Like, this is also a business lesson, right? Of like, if this is not what you should be obsessed about when you're starting a business, but it's like, oh, I personally like that font. I personally like how that looks. Well, I mean, in hindsight, it must have been fun, but it did not do anything. And then the next thing was the colors. And I got to tell you a funny story. And I know we're looking at past logos and past colors, but when you think about branding, we just did a big cleanup at the end of the year on our drives. And so, you know, you're poking around in folders you haven't been in a while. There was some old branding. And I was like, this is worse than finding pictures in the 80s with like teased out hair and blue eyeshadow. I was like, what was I thinking? And oh, there's so much. And then on the other hand, you're like, and I'm so grateful and appreciative that we have matured in business and evolved, because I can't believe like that was what I chose back then.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's common. I think a lot of people, they go down that route because it just makes sense. Like, it's the low hanging fruit. And what inevitably ends up happening is you have your logo, you have your colors. Now maybe you're in market. Let's say you're on Instagram and you're struggling. You're like, okay, I need to write content, but like, who am I writing to? Like, you know, like, what problem am I solving? Like, who are these people? What do they like? What resonates with them? And then people, there's just so much confusion. And what typically happens is like people just stall out. They're like, I don't know. Like they're pivoting, they're going in different directions, but it's like that clarity is not there. And when we talk at brand strategy, we start like before we even look at logos, before we even look at colors. They're still important and still a lot of fun, but like I'm working with people for 3-4 weeks before we even talk about visuals. I'm talking about, Amber, so why did you start this business? Why is productivity so important to you? How has it changed your life? Like, who do you think would be the target? And then my favorite question is, and what else? And what else? And what else? And I just want to keep probing.
Oh my gosh.
Like, keep
it's
trying.
Like business therapy. You're like, talk therapy, talk it out until you know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And then eventually somewhere in that conversation, like, I'm going to find like that thing. We're going to find that. We're going to have that aha moment where it's like, oh, this is the thing that we need to pull out. This is what's going to really resonate with people. And so like, that's kind of the process of how we do it. You don't have to do it with someone like me. You could do it on your own. I always say, just like free write, like get a piece of paper, get a pen, start writing, start asking your question, and what else, and what else, and what else, just get it all out. And then like when the well is absolutely dry, stop, go to sleep, wake up the next morning and do it again. You know?
Oh, wow. Well, I could see, answering the questions yourself and like getting it all out. But you know what I think is so valuable is that you're able to, from a third outside neutral party, say, and there's the nugget. Because when we say things, and this is my own experience, nothing else sounds special because it's just what I do. It's just how I deliver it. It's just the thing that I do. And I can tell you through my own journey of understanding and stepping into my own brand and the evolution of it was that I was making it far more complicated than it needed to be because I kept dismissing the value that I provided as like, of course I do that. Of course that's just how it is. And until somebody else is like, no, like somebody would pay you for that thing that you're dismissing and you would have just overlooked.
Yeah, no, that is so true. Like my favorite expression is like, you can't read the message from inside the bottle, right?
Yeah.
And that's so true, right? Like, I think you have to have a lot of self-awareness in order to really be able to do something like this for yourself. And I think that is the value of having a partner, right? Or having someone to help you with this. Now, you asked me, the question was about ROI. The reason why I say the ROI is invaluable is because what happens to most people is that they struggle, they get stuck, they can't answer this question. And then they end up like hiring a business coach that charges them like $80,000 to solve this problem for them.
Right.
And so that's why I'm like,
you're right. Like when they don't have a clue where they're going, who they're going after, what is their offer, what makes them unique, it is such a challenge. And I just took a deep breath because I can tell you that was probably, if somebody asked me in the last 15 years what my biggest challenge was, in my view, it would have been that. It was like narrowing in, getting clear. What are the words that land and resonate? Pivot over and over until I landed. And now I'm like, I'm not changing for a long time. We are here.
yeah,
It took so long to get that clarity. And so
Yeah.
it could have been shortcut. There could have been a shortcut. And I know that now looking back, but when you're in it, you're like, let's try something else. Okay, let's do this again.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad that you arrived at that destination because that's a very important place to get to. And, you know, it's where it is really helpful to have someone to guide you that's like, okay, this is what's going to resonate with people, right?
Yeah.
And then the other part of brand strategy that's really important is the competitive analysis and the key differentiators. And I know a lot of people are like, I love my competitors. Like, that's fine, love them. But like, they're still your competitors. Like, if you like your customers ultimately are going to make a decision between you or them, and you want that decision to be you. And so it's really important that you get really clear on like, what are those key differentiators that are going to make you stand out and make people choose you over your competitors, although you may love them. And and like, there might be situations where like, maybe your competitor is a better fit, but like, let's make that very clear, right? Like,
don't confuse the client that has to make the decision.
Exactly.
Let it be super clear. And this is where I even got confused in our pre-chat, because if you were to ask me what makes me different is my personality, but I'm a coaching business, right? Like I am the service. So for another company, call it an interior designer or a real estate agent, like maybe it's not specifically their personality, but how they deliver the service.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a big difference when you're a coach and when you are not only a founder led, but you in a lot of ways are the brand, right? Because I have to like you. If we're going to work together and you're going to help me with productivity, we're going to get very intimate, right? Like,
that's right.
I'm going to be like, Amber, I had a terrible day today, you know?
Yeah. And, I almost feel like I just have to walk that back almost, because I'm like, even interior designer, it's their style, it's their personality, what they bring. A real estate agent, like they all sell houses. So how do they sell houses? So I got to come up with another example, but there's so many businesses where the founder's personality isn't impacting as much the brand's strategy.
Yeah. I mean, I think in order for someone to know your personality, they need to have a conversation with you, right? Yeah. So like you have to basically be in the consideration set, right? And if that's not the case, then that means you're using a platform like an Instagram or TikTok, or you're using your podcast, right? To really, really highlight your personality so that they fall in love with your personality. And then it's like, no, I can't work with just any productivity person. I have to work with Amber, right? But when we're dealing with a market like a real estate firm, for example, there will be different attributes that will be more important, or maybe there's none, right? Because if we're talking about real estate, I live in Brooklyn. If we're talking about real estate in Brooklyn, and like there's 10 real estate companies and they all pretty much have access to the same listings, like who I go with, it could be a matter of how do they show up? What does their website look like? What does their onboarding process look like? How quickly do they respond to my call, right? Like, like, do they look approachable or do they look stuffy? What's more my vibe? You know what I mean? So like there is a lot of different factors that could come into play before I even have an interaction with them.
Right. Right. Okay. So I want to just highlight something that you said, and it was brief, but I think it's so important, is were you even in consideration?
Yeah.
So can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think like a lot of times it's like, we will say like, I have things that I offer, but like you have to actually be someone that's on their radar first, right? Like I can't hire you, Amber, if I don't know that you have a great personality. How am I going to figure that out, right?
Right.
But what I can hire you for is because I need a lot of help with productivity and it's something I've never wrapped my arms around. So maybe you have a method that you have produced, then that method has produced a lot of great results for your clients, right? So that's when we go to those key differentiators. Like what is going to make you different and what is going to make your business stand out over someone else.
Right. And so to answer that, you not only need to understand what your company can provide, and if you're a led founder, what you provide, but to your point, love your competitors, you need to know who you're in consideration with.
Exactly.
Right? And like, what are the points in which your ideal client is making their decisions on? What information do they need to make the decision, you or somebody else?
Absolutely. And that's why one of my favorite questions to ask anyone, someone hires me, I'm like, thank you so much for hiring me. And then my next question is, who else did you consider hiring? Because I want to know, like, who else was in the consideration set? And it's funny because a lot of times it's the same couple of names that pop up. And I'm like, I love that. I vibe with that. I'm glad you like them because I like their brand too. They're a great founder. I love them, but I'm glad you chose me instead.
That is incredible. That's going to be my nugget for today's conversation. I do not ask that question. I think that's a great question.
Yes, it's a great
question. Incredible. Yeah.
That's how
because
you're really...
I ask, like, how did you hear about me? Right? Like, in which way did somebody refer you? Did you find the podcast and things like that? But that's really me focused. Okay, great. You're already here. Now I know what marketing's working, but to understand who else is in the sandbox with you, like who your competitors are, is great intel.
It's such great intel because the thing, like we said, we started by talking about business plans. And then you said, and like, I don't know anyone who has a business plan. And also I don't know anyone who has a business where they actually stuck to that plan. You said something to that.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, and they said it worked exactly as planned. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another key piece with your brand strategy. It is going to evolve, right? So when we first start working together, you might say, these are the brands that I really like and I feel like I'm competing with. But that maybe is not accurate. Maybe you're competing with other people. And that's when we start to zero in on, okay, like if these 2 or 3 names keep coming up every single time that, you know, someone works with me, now I can start to understand like, okay, like what do we have in common? Like, why would they look at them? Also, what's different? Why do they ultimately choose me? Right. And so I think it helps you to even start to pull out more nuggets of information to even make those key differentiators even stronger.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is right, but as you're saying this, what I'm thinking is if you knew who else was in the sandbox, you knew what was similar, but you knew what made you different, you can just be highlighted. And different doesn't mean it's the right fit for that client. It just means if you speak to the differences, you're helping them make a decision about what's the best fit for them. And you're highlighting, here's how I do it. Here's what you said, my methodology. And you're highlighting if your personality fits in, like, but what do you feel that you do different? And maybe they're like raising their hand, like, yes, that's exactly what I want. Or you shortcutted it and y'all can get off the phone on the consultation or discovery call. That's not what they want. And so everything became more efficient with them making a decision who they want to work with.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So what else is in the process of brand strategy? So we talked about understanding your competitors and what makes you different. What is next to consider under brand strategy?
Like we should have started with like the mission, the vision, although honestly, those things could happen at the end because I kind of think of those as like the executive summary of a business plan. Like it's much easier to look at to think about your mission and your vision sort of after everything's already mapped out, right? Because that's kind of like the very like holistic view of what you want to achieve, right?
And when you say mission and vision, do you mean the vision of like where the company's going or like the vision of the brand specifically?
So, I mean, like the vision of the brand. So basically, well, actually, they're intertwined, right?
Okay.
Because for you, Amber, you might be like, my mission is to help people feel more calm and less chaos. And basically, like, that's your mission, right? You want to help people feel more in alignment with their goals and get more stuff done, right?
Yeah.
And then your vision could be, I want to help 1 million people achieve this through my patented productivity system, da, 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 da. Lofty goal, but like that's what our vision is, right? So the vision is more of like the thing that you print down and like put on the wall. And like this could be the call to action for everyone in your company, right? Like this is why we wake up. This is our driving force. This is what we do. And this is where we want to go. So that's really what the difference between the mission and the vision are. And a lot of people, it's very difficult to figure that out when you're still kind of sorting through all the details of the business. And that's why I really like to use it as like kind of like the last thing.
I actually love that you said that because it's like writing. You're like, okay, I get an outline, then I have an idea first, just a concept. Then I go with an outline. Then I have a draft. But when you ask somebody to create their vision first, you're like, so we skipped getting all the elements to make the summary to your point, right?
Right.
And I don't think enough people are talking about that. Therefore, what happens? The business owner is like, there's something wrong with me. Why don't I know what my vision is and where we're going? And why don't I have clarity around all of that? And what I hear you saying is this process that you take them through helps them get to the end point of having clarity around mission and vision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's great.
Yeah. And the clarity is so important because I also think that like we live in a space where like everyone's trying to sell us the latest, greatest thing as small business owners, right? And it's so, don't get me wrong, I have been there. I have been that person that was like buying every course and this and that and thinking like, this is the thing. I never really pivoted because honestly, too lazy for that, but I thought about it a lot. You know what I mean? And so I feel like having that clarity is like really, really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. So just a quick little story. I actually did have to pivot. So when I told you I landed, it was after quite a few pivots. And the pivots were informed by trial and error. What does the market want? What resonated with the market? And, you know, when you said you haven't pivoted yet, I'm guessing you didn't have to because you did all this work up front. I didn't do all that work up front. So mine was like, hey, new logo, new title, new business cards, new website. And then you're like, and again, in another year and a half, let's try this again. And it was hard and I do not recommend it to anybody. So to understand that there is resources out there that's going to walk you through a process so that you're landing, if not on target, really, really close to their little pivots and not overhauls, I really recommend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, So then what is next in the brand identity that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah. So once you've done that, the other piece of it are really focused more on the overall. So you've got the brand visuals laid out. Then you want to work on the brand voice. So that's what words are you using? How are you showing up? How are you talking? Right. So that's a very integral part of it because if you're a luxury brand, then you might be using different words to describe things. Whereas if your goal is to be very like, you know, conversational, then there might be other words that you're using. Right. So really figuring out like, how not only like it's a living, breathing thing, right? What are the values? What is the mission? What's the vision? Like, what does the brand look like? What's the identity look like? And now, how does this brand show up in the world, right? What is its personality? How does it operate? And then when we start talking about brand personality, we also can start talking about, brand archetypes, right? So there are several different archetypes for brands. Like, some brands are hero brands, some brands are more creator brands. And that's really when we start to take inspiration from other big brands and how they've positioned themselves from a psychological standpoint, right? So like a brand like Apple would be considered more of like a creator and or a hero brand, right? Because of the way they position themselves. So a lot of times it's funny because people in very like layman's terms will tell you the types of brands they resonate without necessarily like saying it. Like you might say like, oh, a brand I really, really like is Godiva, right? And it's like, well, ultimately, what is Godiva about? Godiva is about helping people feel these special moments and like maybe feel a moment of intimacy and love and connection, right? So like that brand would fall into the caregiver, like, realm. So that's kind of how we get to that archetype. Honestly, they're just a lot of fun. And then it just helps you again figure out like, what is the personality for my brand and how do I communicate?
Yeah. I have a question about the personality. So I've been diving into AI recently. Do you have any opinions about how AI is going to play a role in brand voice and copy and as a tool, or is it going to be a detriment? Are we going to lose people's real authentic voices? I don't know. That was a really compounded question. Tell me whatever you want to know about AI.
I have loads of opinions on AI, of course.
Yeah.
I think like, I would love to say this, ChatGPT is not going to solve your brand strategy problems. I mean, I think it could help you basically, get through this work faster, but really it has to come from you,
Yeah.
And maybe a year from now, I'll be wrong. Maybe 5 years from now, we'll all be wrong.
But currently, yeah, you're like, when is this being published?
Exactly.
Like, what is the current state of AI? That's how fast stuff is moving. I'm in agreement with you. And I was a little resistant to AI because I thought it was a cheat code. I'm like, no, I'm going to know my voice. I know I know what I want to create. And then I actually took my blinders off and started like diving into it and learning it and understanding it. And I realized I actually have, because I understand my brand voice so much, because I know my methodology, because I know what I stand for, because I have 15 years of content creation, I'm sitting on a landmine of assets that if I didn't use AI to now just make the work a little bit faster or easier, but I wouldn't go to AI to kind of answer these, like, I just wanted to say life-changing questions, but they are like, nothing feels better than knowing your position in your business and what your company stands for. It makes so many things easier. And so I wouldn't go to AI for them to just spit something out that they're probably going to tell the next person and the next person.
Yeah, no, it is so true. But I think you just leaned into something that's really valuable. Like once you have this beautiful brand strategy guide, you could then upload that into ChatGPT. And now you have this asset who knows your brand, right? Because
That's
it's
right.
like, I just told, and this is the problem that most people make. They say, ChatGPT, give me copy for this candle I want to sell. And so ChatGPT is going to give you something very generic, maybe if you ask it to get clever or punchy, it will, but like, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a very surface level output. But if you have a brand strategy for your candle company and you feed this information to ChatGPT, now all of a sudden you could say, ChatGPT, I just gave you everything you need to know about this brand. Now help me create content. And then the output that you get should be exponentially better.
Yes. And you can talk back. So stay with me for a second. So you feed it this content and then it gives you something. And then because you understand me, the person, the company owner, the employee understands the brand, you're going to know, did it follow the instructions or not? And do you have to say, sorry, you missed the mark, ChatGPT, try again?
Yes.
No, go back to the document. You should see the conversations I have with ChatGPT and Claude. So you're like, we're going in a different direction. I don't like where you're going. But could you have the confidence to say that if you didn't do the work to get that clarity around your brand, right? So load the
Absolutely.
document. That thing does not actually follow the rules all the time, in my opinion.
It.
Again, we're like, when is this going to be published? Maybe it's going to be smarter than us by the time this gets published in a couple of months. But as it is right now, yeah, as it is now. Okay, so I love this. So it's something that you can use as a tool, but it doesn't leapfrog the work and the clarity and the process of making these decisions about your brand.
Correct.
Okay. All right. All right. So listen, we're talking about copy. And so, after you have, identified your voice and the words you use, we're talking about uploading this to AI, but like that's something that can be used to work with a copywriter.
Absolutely.
To influence social media and influence the words that are on your website. Are there other things that I'm not thinking of that would get influenced by this brand voice?
Yeah. So that's pretty much everything. Like the brand at the end, what you end up with is the brand strategy guide. Like that's the output we want to create. And then the goal of that is like, that's what would be basically like your brand Bible, right? So if you had new freelancers that were working with you, instead of, trying to teach them everything, you could just give them this guide. And now all of a sudden they know, what your brand stands for, how your brand communicates, what your brand looks like. They even know things like, how to use your logo, how to use your fonts, right? The proper like spacing and settings. Basically, it's a comprehensive view of your brand. And we didn't talk about imagery, but imagery is a big part of that as well, right? So that's when we kind of go more into the personal brand, right? Because now that we created this beautiful brand, what do the images on the website look like? What do the images on social look like, right? So that's going to be all part of it.
Okay, this is excellent. And I'm so glad that you circled back to that you can get, and you said like contractors and stuff like that, but employees too, right? Like when my assistant's writing an email, we have a particular tone. When she's scheduling or rescheduling, there are words I do not like being used, and there's words that I do because we are a time management productivity company. Like those topics and how we handle them matter. And so we have guidelines for, what does her representing the company sound like? Sorry, Amber's unavailable for 3 weeks. That sounds like I cannot manage my schedule and I'm so busy. That's not true. That's not true. We don't use those words, so like subtly, well, how do you say the same thing? Because how somebody perceives it is everything. So the words we're choosing is how the person on the other end is perceiving your brand. And so obviously that area for me, really matters when we're talking about scheduling and timing and all that stuff. But I'm sure other brands have their like little spots where like they really want to highlight and be very particular with how their employees are using words in communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we did work in some ROI here, but I want to just talk about, so you have your brand strategy, like it's this huge asset in your business. And now what do you do? Do you hire somebody to build a website, which I know you do? Like, what do you do?
Yes,
like, not only that, so like, hey, brand strategy done. What do you do next to get the biggest ROI on that brand strategy?
Yeah. So I think any of those assets are really important. Your website is critical. That could be a whole nother episode, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, a website is a critical marketing asset for you to have. But, all of the content that you create, these are all assets that should come from the work that you did with the brand strategy guide.
Excellent. All right. So if my listeners want to learn more about you and connect with you, and I think you have a guide that you wanted to share with our listeners, can you share with them how they can get that and how they can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can go to our website, socialcircleinc.com, and then they will see an opt-in for our free brand strategy workbook. It comes with a 14-day free email course course, which will basically walk you through each of the steps that I outlined with Amber today. And then there's some other resources and templates include so that you can get a head start and start doing this on your own. Of course, if you're looking for a professional, I'd love to work with you. And there's also lots of other great brand strategists that are out there that can support you. But even if you've done a little bit of the work, I think it's a great resource to help you just go through it again and just make sure that there's, in case there's any fine tuning or anything you can do to improve.
Oh, I appreciate that. We'll make sure we have links in the show. But man, you listeners know that I end everything with a call to action for you to take action on what you learned. And I just love that your opt-in is literally the next step for them. Like, thank you for tuning in for the last hour with us. But like, here's going to be the tools to take and put that into action. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Amber. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I have loved having you listen to this episode of the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. And I sure hope you found my conversation with Jacinta to be valuable. Our conversation all about your brand strategy. But I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. What is one small change that you can make that will help you with your brand strategy, that will position you and your business as the go-to business, the go-to expert? And before we close out talking about taking action, have you considered hiring a business coach? Well, now is the time. Don't wait. Don't let it be another thing that sits on your to-do list. It's just a conversation. Schedule a discovery call to find out how working together can impact your business. It can help you be a better leader. It can help create efficiency in your business, manage your time, reduce your stress, bring back joy into running your business, and so much more. It's just a conversation. So head on over to amberdelagarza.com/coaching to find out more and to schedule your call today. And if you're new here, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, be sure to share it with another business owner who you think would find it valuable. So that's my Straight Talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.